Okay, this is our last. We'll make this one super short, 5 minutes or so. Our last lecture video for week 3. I just wanted to talk a little bit about social groups, and so I will be answering question 5 in a little bit. All right, so when we talk about social groups, a lot of times what we're talking about is group size. So I have a few definitions I'm going to give you here. So dyads are groups of 2. That's what we see in this picture here. Best friends when they're 80 years old. So dyads are the most intimate form of social life. The existence of the group is dependent on both people's involvement. So for example, a couple is a dyad. Symmetry and fairness are very important to dyads. So it's always very important that both sides are recognized and honored in these groups. Triads are groups of 3, and actually I might not have spelled that right here. I believe that's right. I wonder if it's with an I or with a Y. Anyway, so this group will outlast. It will outlast one person leaving. These are interesting groups. Triads are. A lot of times they're difficult groups because if you remember, your mom might have said to you, oh, you never like playing in groups of 3. Groups of 3 are difficult to play in because everybody knows intrinsically that the group will remain even if you leave. Also, secrets can be held within the group, but excluding one member. Power relations in triads change according to the role that the third person takes. And so those are interesting ways. Now, of course, we all know what small groups, parties, and large groups are, but in sociology, we have specific definitions, and I wanted to give them to you today. So small groups are groups of 4 or more people in which there is face-to-face interaction. I don't know if that's still the case. Maybe interaction on the internet as well. They are unifocal, which means that there is one center of attention. So everyone is kind of there for the same reason. There's a lack of formal arrangement or roles, so there's no leader. There's no followers. There's no formal arrangement into the group, and everybody is equal. No member can dissolve the group, and everybody is pretty much there for the same reason. An example of that would be people waiting for at a bus stop together. If you're waiting at a bus stop, everyone's there for the same reason. You're there face to face. It's unifocal because there's one center of attention. Everyone's waiting for the bus. There's no formal arrangement. Nobody's in charge. Everyone's just there. And everybody is equal, pretty much. So that is actually the answer to question 5, is random people who happen to be waiting for a bus stop together, is an example of a small group. A party in sociological terms is a lot like a small group, but it's not unifocal, it's multifocal. So there's, at a party, there's not just one center of attention at all times. Usually there's more than one center, more than one conversation happening. There are multiple areas of focus. And then a large group is a formal structure that mediates interaction. There is status differentiation in a large group. We all generally know the statuses of others in large groups. An example of a large group is a classroom, our class even though we're not face to face. But let's use a face to face class. So it's formal. You know what you're there for. Everyone is there for the same reason. There is status differentiation. Not everybody is a student in the class. You have an instructor. Sometimes there's a TA. So not everyone there is there for the same reason. So that's a large group. There are also different types of social groups. There's primary and secondary groups, in and out groups, and reference groups. So primary groups are groups that are limited in size. They do require face-to-face interactions, and they have a purpose. People in your primary group are key agents of socialization. Members are not interchangeable, and your relationships with members of your primary group often endure. So people in your primary group are usually family members, very close members of your family, like many people call like auntie, an uncle, like they would be part of your primary group. Very, very close friends. I have a few friends who I've been friends with for over 40 years. They are members of my primary group. And then secondary groups are more impersonal. They can, like people in your second group might know other people in the group, but probably don't know everyone in the group. They are usually instrumental for some reason. They have a purpose. Roles are important rather than individuals. So secondary groups might be like who you work with at work, okay, your workmates. So if you work at Subway, like everyone who works at Subway with you, this is a secondary group. People come and go. If you become good friends, you may stay in touch with them, or you may not. And then maybe they become part of your primary group. But secondary groups are more formal, and they're not as emotionally bonded. In-groups and out-groups are really interesting. In-groups are groups that are carry power and are often the majority. Out-groups are groups that are often less powerful, sometimes stigmatized, but the main difference is relative power. So an example of in-groups and out-groups is like immigrants. Immigrants are out-groups. They have come in from the outside, and they have less power than natural-born citizens, or people that have been here a long time, or people who were born here, which is sort of the opposite of being an immigrant. Generally, immigrants have less power than people who were born here, and so this is an example of an out-group. Usually out-groups are not treated in an equal fashion by the in-group, and sometimes this leads to people feeling like they're on the outside. Another example of in-groups and out-groups is like if you're the new student, then you're the out-group. Like all the new students are the out-group. People who have, I went to the same school with the same kids from the time I was in kindergarten all the way through high school. And whenever anybody new came, they were definitely in the out group, and we let them know. They didn't know the culture, they didn't know the norms, and they didn't have the power, and we let them know very clearly. I'm going to skip reference groups for now. So group conformity is something that I'm not going to talk about in lecture, but I did want to bring up that you should look up the ASH study. and you can look for the video on Canvas. There will be one or two questions on the exam about the ASH study. Okay, that does it for our lectures for this week. I want to thank you for joining me. You should have all the quiz questions by now. If you have any problems, be sure to email me. All right, great. I'll see you this week on the discussion board.